Welcome to Today's Homeowner with Danny Lipford. Expert advice on improving your home from the pages of Today's Homeowner magazine and remodeling contractor Danny Lipford.
Having your house re-roofed can be very expensive, and because of the expense, it's very important to select the right shingle. Not only the right shingle for the architectural style of the house, but the roofing shingle that'll perform the best for you. Well, this week's show, we'll show you what's involved in selecting that right shingle and how a complete roofing system works. Also, we'll travel to Chicago and talk with a roofer there about a very common problem in colder climates, ice damming. He'll show us how to prevent that problem, and we'll show you how important it is to have the proper attic ventilation in your home. If you're thinking of re-roofing your house, we've got a half hour packed with great roofing information. So stay with us here on Today's Homeowner. Welcome back to the show. You know, a roofing system is made up of a number of components. It starts with a building felt. This is a 15-pound material. It's also available in 30 and other poundages, but 15-pound generally is sufficient to put down over your decking of your roof or over the existing felt that may be on it, like we have here in a re-roofing project. Then around the perimeter of the roof, you're using eave metal or eave stripping. This is a galvanized piece of metal here. It's also available in copper or a baked aluminum, which prevents you from having to paint it, because a galvanized metal is very hard to keep paint on without the proper preparation. But in making your selections for your roof, most of your time will be spent selecting what type of shingle you want. Now, recently at a national trade show, we talked with a roofing expert about what makes up a good shingle.
What makes a good shingle is how four components are put together. The most important is probably the mat. We use a fiberglass mat, which is an inorganic material, and it's not affected by moisture, so it won't curl, buckle, or blister. There's quality back coating asphalt on the bottom side of the mat, filled coating asphalt on the top of the mat, and then ceramic granules pressed into the surface of the shingle. The ceramic granules protect the shingle and the asphalt from ultraviolet denigration, and it also gives us the ability to add our aesthetic features to the product.
Now, the aesthetics that Steve mentioned primarily means the different colors that are available in shingles. There's a number of different colors that are available, and usually that decision is driven by the color scheme of the exterior of your house. But another consideration is, where do you live in the United States? Hot climate or cold climate? If you're in a cold climate, you may consider a darker shingle because it'll absorb more heat and create more heat in your attic. If you're in a warmer climate, you may consider a lighter colored shingle that will reflect more of that heat. It can make a difference of as much as 20 to 30 degrees in an average attic. Another consideration in your selection is the architectural stylings of the shingle. Now, this particular one that was chosen for this house by the homeowner is a dimensional shingle, or also called an architectural styled shingle. Now, this one's a little thicker, has some layers in it here, and kind of simulates the old wood shake look. Now, the most common shingle is called a 3-tab shingle, just like it looks. 3 different tabs here, and this generally is more modest in cost than the other shingle. This one will run you about $25 a square. This one about $60 a square. Now, a square is a unit of measurement that's most commonly used in roofing. It's a 10-foot by 10-foot square area. So if you have a roof like this that you have about 6,000 square feet on, it's going to be 60 squares of roofing that'll be used. Now, of course, the warranty is another important consideration when selecting your shingles. This one has a 25-year guarantee. You can get it up to 30-year guarantee. This one generally carries a 30-year guarantee, and you can get it up to a 40-year guarantee. Of course, no warranty is good unless it's installed properly and you have the proper attic ventilation. Those are things we'll talk about later in the show. Right now, let me show you how all these components go together to create the perfect roof system. There are several flashings that have to be installed very early in a roofing project, and this sidewall flashing actually is installed by the carpenters or framers because it has to extend back up behind the siding. Then when the roofers come on the job, they nail it down by just hooking their nails over the edge of the flashing instead of putting another hole in the actual metal, which could cause a leak. Now this is very important because you get a lot of rain blowing up against a gable like this. This will keep any of the rain from being a problem. Also, they are installing the eave strip very early in the project that I mentioned earlier. You can see some of the old felt here behind it. They hook this over the old felt, then the new felt laps over it. Then they're ready to start their starter course, which is the first shingle they install. And you may notice that it's backwards here with the tabs facing this way. That's to give it a little bit of an overhang here. And the new shingles, when they're installed, will go right over this as well, the actual finished shingle. Now there's other flashings that have to be installed, including valley metal. Now the valley metal, of course, is used in the valleys of the roof, and we've used a galvanized preformed valley metal. It's about 16 inches wide, and it's installed much like the sidewall flashing in just hooking the nails over the little edges with an occasional nail here and there that'll be sealed over with a sealant later on in the project. Now, when you're choosing a roofing contractor to handle your re-roofing project, check with some neighbors that have had their roofs replaced recently and really look at the roof. Make sure that the edges are nice and straight and everything has been cleaned up adequately around the house. But more importantly, check to make sure they have the proper insurance, both workman's comp and general liability. And if licenses are required in your area, make sure that he shows you a current license. Now, stay with us next. We'll head up to Chicago and talk about ice damming.
Get ready to review your fix-it list as Danny and today's Homeowner Magazine repair and maintenance editor Joe Truini show you this week's simple solution. Brought to you by Dodge.
The hole saw is the perfect tool for drilling those large diameter holes like this doorknob hole.
That's right, Danny. The problem with most hole saws, though, is that they dull really quickly. Here's a great way to cut holes much quicker and cleaner.
Now this is a good one. You need to watch this.
First step is to use the hole saw to cut just about 1/8 inch deep or so. Then switch to a drill with a 1/4 inch diameter bit and drill around the perimeter of the hole. These holes create spaces for clearing out the wood chips, which keeps the hole saw cooler and cutting faster. Then switch to the hole saw and finish drilling through the rest of the door. Another benefit of the relief holes is that they help prevent binding, which can really twist your wrist.
Now this could be real helpful if you're drilling in a hardwood door or a plastic laminate countertop that may have 2 layers of particle board.
That's right, and don't forget, whenever you're using the hole saw, to always clamp a piece of scrap wood underneath to prevent splintering on the back side.
Re-roofing a house like this can be a tough job and very expensive, so you want to make sure you do everything necessary to get the most life out of your shingles as you possibly can. Now we're right outside Chicago on a job site, and there's a lot of things you need to consider in a colder climate to make those shingles last. We're going to talk with an area roofer, Steve Reeve, about some of the things you need to consider and what you can do to prevent the problem of ice damming. Now, Steve, I've heard a lot about ice damming, but tell me exactly, what is ice damming?
Well, ice damming is caused when the water from the melting snow, which usually is caused by the sun or the heat loss from the house, comes down the roof, gets to the cold overhang where there's no heat loss underneath it, and slowly freezes up. Eventually it can get as high as 1 foot tall. If we get a warm day, the sun comes out, we get a lot of melting snow, it just runs down and the water has no place to go. It hits this ice dam, seeps right through the shingles, through the felt, through the decking, into the house sometimes to the overhang, sometimes down to the basement. It can keep going.
Okay.
Water travels.
I know it can cause a lot of damage as well as structural damage,
Right.
and I'm sure there's a lot of methods to prevent it. What do you suggest?
Well, probably the most common and probably the best method is to use, well, first of all, generally what's used is felt on a roof deck, and that keeps moisture from forming and everything. But what happens is when a nail is driven through it, it can leave a hole and it doesn't seal around it very tight. What we use is a water and ice barrier, which is a sticky substance. We peel the paper back, put it onto the wood, and when we drive our nail through it, it seals around the head like a gasket, so water can't penetrate through and keeps the water from flowing underneath.
Okay, so generally you would install this around the lower perimeter of the roof.
Right, as well as behind the chimneys or any place where, in the valleys, any place where water can penetrate through.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm sure any quality roof would need a barrier like this. And talking about quality roof, obviously the homeowners have chosen a very good quality shingle with a dimensional thicker, longer lasting shingle. What kind of warranty do you have on this?
Right, this particular shingle has a 25-year warranty. It's also available in a 30 and a 40-year, as well as a lifetime warranty some of the manufacturers have as well.
Okay. Now I know ventilation is very important in the hotter areas of the United States, like where I live, so that you can get good ventilation in the attic so that you're not just baking the shingle. But why is ventilation so important here in these colder climates?
Well, what a lot of people don't realize, in the wintertime, it's probably more important to get the excess moisture out of their attic, because what can happen is it'll dry rot, it'll form underneath on the sheathing and dry rot the roof out. What happens a lot of times in our area, when it gets down to sub-zero weather, people have humidifiers and they put too much moisture in the air. It goes in the underneath side of their attic and freezes, and consequently they literally sometimes have rainforests up there when it warms up.
Oh, I see. So that can help a lot in preventing that. And I notice here, this house has adequate soffit ventilation, and also I guess you're using some ridge venting along here in some places.
Right, on that section there we've got the ridge vent, and over here we've got the power fan, as well as some regular passive vents.
Okay, all right. Well, ventilation is important both in hot climates and cold climates, and when we come back, we'll tell you a lot more about proper house ventilation. Stay with us.
It's time to check out this week's best new product with Danny and today's Homeowner Magazine Editor-in-Chief, Paul Spring.
Now this is one tool that has changed very little over the years, the hammer.
Well, Danny, even the lowly hammer has been addressed lately. In fact, Stanley has done that kind of top to bottom. They call this the anti-vibe hammer. And anti-vibe really says it all. What they tried to do first and foremost was to cut down that repetitive injury and the vibration you feel in your wrist and in your elbow when you spend all day with a hammer.
I've seen a lot of ambitious homeowners out there trying to build the deck or put up that fence to have a little arm strain that next day.
Yeah, they sure do. So several other features on this are terrific. I love this nub down here, and what that does is when your hand is sweaty and you're swinging a hammer hard, it keeps your hand right on that soft grip handle.
I've seen a lot of those framing carpenters that take a standard hammer and wrap tape around the end of it for that very purpose.
I used to do that myself.
Now this is a 16-ounce hammer. What about some different sizes here?
Well, there are a number of different sizes. This is a great one actually for homeowners because it's not too heavy. It has the curved claw, which is really a utility claw, and the smooth face. But let me show you some of the others, Danny. Now here's a monster, a 24-ounce framing hammer. You can see it has the rip claw, which is useful in that kind of rough framing work, and it has the waffle face or mill face to it.
I see. Now this is a classic design, some new improvements on a very old tool. Now the manufacturer of this new 3-tab shingle roof gives its shingle a 20-year warranty, but it won't last that long without proper attic ventilation. Now attic ventilation, giving good fresh air into the attic and then being able to exhaust all the moist hot air is just very important, not only for your energy savings, but for the longevity of shingles. Now one way to mix that air and get that good fresh air into the attic is through the use of a gable louver. Now here in the new gable of a new roof section, you can see how the framers left an area here for the new vent to be installed. Now these cost about $50 at a home center, or a sheet metal shop can customize one of these if you have an unusual situation in your gable. But either way, you're getting a way for that hot air to really exhaust out of your attic. Now, of course, there's several ways in order to do this. Now, this is a new section of the roof, and you can see a type of ridge venting that is being used on this. And we'll show you the finished look of this in just a second. But while the roofers were here, the homeowners decided to also install the continuous ridge venting on an existing part of their roof. Now, how we were able to get started on this is to remove the existing ridge shingles, ridge caps off of this area, then using a chalk box and about a 3.5-inch wide gap here, we were able to cut that out with a circular saw and remove all of the pieces of decking, then come back and re-nail any of the existing decking that stays in place back good and secure. Then the next step after that is to roll out the fabric material that makes up this ridge venting system. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick, it's very dense, and the real nice part about it, it allows you to put the ridge vent back over it, making it almost invisible once it's completed, but still allows you the ability to get the moist, wet air out of your attic. Now let me show you what it looks like once it's completed. You know, the one thing about this continuous ridge system is it blends so well into the existing roof because you're able to put the actual shingles themselves right on top of the fabric. Now, of course, to get to this point, you're rolling out all of the fabric material and nailing it down on either side of the trenched out area at the top of the ridge. Then after cutting these ridge caps, just like you would any other ridge caps, you're able to nail them down right on top of them to give it this good low profile look. And of course it works well because you have that good evenness all the way around it like we have here that's allowing all of that hot moist air to continue very passively to escape from the attic itself. Of course, the success of any continuous ridge venting system like this is only as good as the amount of fresh intake air you have in your soffit and overhang areas. Let me show you a couple ways of achieving that. Now, one of the easiest ways to provide some good fresh air intake around the soffit areas is to install soffit vents. Now, you can see Lee is using a rectangular 8x16 piece, and it's really easy to install once you've established that cut about every 6 to 8 feet around the lower part of the roof. Now, what you have to do is after your layout, using a circular saw, cutting these out very carefully, and you undersize the hole just a little bit so that the flange will cover them sufficiently, and then you nail them in as he did with galvanized nails. Now, there's other systems that are available as well along these same lines, and architecturally you may find that a round soffit vent will blend better with your house. These are available in 1.5" and 3" sizes, and again, they're made out of aluminum. Another system, which is fairly hard to install on an existing house, is a continuous soffit system. This requires a channel to be cut about 3 inches wide, very similar to the ridge venting that we looked at a little earlier. And it's very hard to install on an existing house, perfect for new construction. Now, with vinyl covered overhangs, it's very easy to achieve the type of ventilation that's necessary by using the perforated panels every few feet to give that good fresh intake of air. Now, cost-wise, to install soffit vents like this, they're only $2 a piece at the hardware store or at the home center, and are very easy to install. Now, if a contractor takes care of this for you, it may be $20 or $25, but well worth it to get the good, fresh exchange of air in your attic, to keep it good and healthy, to lower your energy bills, and to make sure you get all of the years you're expecting out of your new roof. Now, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Now, let's go outside for Around the Yard with Danny and lawn and garden expert Jennifer Brennan. Brought to you by Scott's Lawn Products, for a great lawn, guaranteed.
Most people think of landscape fabric like this as a way to control weeds, but Jennifer tells me there's more advantages than that.
Yes, Danny, when you use this in conjunction with mulch, you can increase the rooting capacity on a newly planted tree or an existing tree by 90%. The landscape fabric not only holds the weeds down, but it keeps the soil temperatures more uniform and the soil moisture more uniform.
Okay, now what about the grass growing under it and around the tree that necessitates having to use a weed whacker to clear that out? Does that help?
This is an excellent product for restricting that. You don't get any damage from those products, and then as the grass grows underneath, the light is restricted and it dies, so it can't get in close to the trunk of the tree.
Okay, what about some tips on the mulching here? How thick and how much should you use?
You want to put it down 2 to 4 inches deep, but you want to be cautious, take caution and keep it away from the trunk by about 4 inches, because that will prevent any fungus from attacking the trunk itself, and also will prevent any insects from being interested in the tree trunk itself. This is such a great product. Don't just use it on trees and shrubs, use it on all your planting beds in your garden.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's show, and I really hope we've been able to give you some helpful information that'll guide you through the next time you're having to re-roof your house.